As I lay in bed one night, unable to sleep, I had a terrifying realization. It was not that I had transmorphed into a giant insect or that my rent was running late, but I realized it was Halloween and I had failed to make a Halloween deck. So, I jumped out of bed knowing exactly what I must do. I had to make a deck guaranteed to scare any Magic player. Vampires. Not particularly scary and kind of overdone. I wasn't feeling it. Will Helps, zombies, way, way, way overdone, and again, just not scary enough. Raphael, not that scary, and also wildly undersupported, not feeling it. Tovalor, more arousing than scary for most players that I know, and also unsupported. Spirit, I've made too many Spirits decks. I'm not doing this again. I have like 4 mono white Spirit decks. I'm not doing this again. No, it's not happening. Ululek with Eldrazi is something I considered, but again, kind of overdone and guaranteed to get me hated off the table before I could even really start playing. Not gonna work. Sea serpents was what I considered. Krakens, leviathans, and octopi, but I realized that I'm kind of the only person I know who's terrified of the ocean. It wasn't gonna work. So I sat at my desk, continuing to think, what could I possibly do? What can I do to scare the pants off of any Magic player? And like a bolt from the heavens, inspiration struck me. The answer? Women. Everyone at every LGS is terrified of women. This is true. This is a fact. It's well known. They're terrified of women. So I set out to build a woman-only deck. These two were my first considerations, Alicia Reanimator and Sarah Legendary Creatures. Sarah I couldn't quite get to work in a way I felt was good, and Alicia just overplayed. I wasn't feeling Alicia. Back to the drawing board I went, and I saw the perfect commander. This continues to be a Reanimator deck with the lovely Muldrotha. During one of our turns, we may play a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from our graveyard. We can play a similar game plan to Alicia, and I decided to keep legendary creatures only from Sarah to make the deck a little more thematic. And without further ado, let me show off the women who will be joining us today. At Cheek, Emerald Radiant. When she enters, create a 1/1 green insect creature token for each artifact and or creature in our graveyard. Whenever another insect dies, put a +1/+1 counter, and each opponent loses 1 life. Very handy. Very, very handy. Free damage, and she creates a lot of insects if she comes down late. On the insect game, we also have Amzu, Swarm's Hunger. Other insects have Menace. And whenever a card leaves our graveyard, such as being cast by our commander, we get to create an insect and then put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on it. Only once a turn, though, so be careful. Arasta of the Endless Web isn't quite an insect, but she is a very motherly character, I dare say. Gives us spider tokens to defend ourselves whenever our opponents get too tricky with their spells. Very, very nice to have around. Aromi of the Dead Tide exiles cards from our graveyard equal to the number of opponents. Target creature in our graveyard gains Encore until end of turn. If Muldrotha can't come out, this lets us pull a couple more guys back or a couple more gals rather back for one more swing. Yara, first of Locked Wayne, when she or another black creature enters, everyone gets pinged. We gain life. She keeps us alive, does extra damage, and draws us cards by sacrificing creatures. Very lovely. Bantu the Glorified, my favorite. She cannot attack or block unless a creature died under our control this turn. We have more than enough ways to kill our own creatures, with her included. Scries loses life, we gain life. Lovely lady. I adore Bantu. Braids, a Risen Nightmare. At the beginning of each end step, we sacrifice something. We get to choose a permanent type. When we sacrifice it, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type. If they fail to do so, they lose 2 life, and we draw a card. Very handy. Dragonlord Silumgar. Another lovely lady here. We just yoink something. Our opponent drops something, we yoink it. That's ours now. Eloy's Nephalia Sloop. Whenever another creature you control dies, investigate. Whenever you sacrifice a token, surveil. Very helpful for filling our graveyard for Muldrotha, and she gives us card draw as well with our investigations. Empress Galena, much like Silumgar, Empress Galena loves to make friends, so she'll take control of your opponent's commanders. Sacrifice them to whatever you feel like. Evie Fry draws a card, discard, card selection, very handy. Jacob Fry's not here because he's not a woman. Shrug, target creature can't be blocked. We have a number of creatures who can't, or who want to swing for their effects, so that makes her very useful. Evan, Waterdeep Opportunist, gets bigger for each treasure we control. Whenever a creature is sacrificed, we get treasures, only once per turn, and she forces sacrifice if they want to target her. Very, very nice. Galta, Primal Hunger, another favorite gal of mine. She gets exponentially cheaper the more creatures' power we control. Very useful to just run over some guy, and pretty cheap to reanimate, usually. Gisa, Glorious Resurrector. Speaking of reanimation, this lovely lady from Innistrad, make sure that our opponents can't use their graveyard for strategies. Anything that we exile, because they died, gets on our field instead. They gain Decayed, which means they can't block, but we can sacrifice them for our various effects, or just beat our opponents to death with them. We get to pick. God Eternal Bantu is back, baby! And while she may look worse for wear, this delightful gal is more than she is sorry. She is more than capable of holding her own. Whenever she dies or is put into exile, she comes back to us, unlike my ex. She also, upon entry, sacrifices anything we don't really need, then gives us stuff to replace it. Love her. Kaga, Shadow Archdruid. I don't know why it's this art. I hate this art of her. Whenever she attacks, it gains Death Touch. She gains Death Touch until end of turn. Mill 2 cards. She fills the graveyard for Muldrotha to do. Once during each of our turn, we may play a land or cast a permanent spell from among cards that were put there this turn. Very helpful for when Muldrotha is not out. More lands from the graveyard. Kel's Fight fixes whenever you sacrifice a creature, you may pay. If you do, draw a card. Sacrifice a creature, indestructible. Handy Swinger, handy sacrifice outlet, and a very handy way to draw extra cards to try and dump into the graveyard. Kinzu of the Bleak Coven, whenever another non-token creature I control dies, we may pay 2 life and exile it. If we do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's 1/1 and has Toxic 1. This pairs well with Eevee Fry, making unblockable infect counters. Liliana, Heretical Healer. Whenever another non-token creature dies, we exile her, then return her flipped. If we do, create a 2/2 zombie. Her flipped form is very, very handy. +2, each player discards a card. -X literally does not matter, we only have legendary creatures. And -8's the real kicker. Whenever any creature, not just our own, dies, we get it on our field at the next end step, and we can sacrifice those things again and again and again to fuel whatever we need. Marin of Clan Neltoth is an example of what we can be fueling. At the beginning of our end step, choose target creature in our graveyard. If its mana value is less than or equal to the number of experience we have, which she gets from our creatures dying, we get to return it to the battlefield. Otherwise, just put it into our hand to cast a little later. Moira, Urborg Hunt, gets to return creatures from the graveyard to the battlefield that died this turn. You sacrificed Marin, perchance? Bring her back as long as she hits. Make her unblockable with Eevee. Easy win. Prime Speaker Vanifar. Great card. She turns one of our gals into dust to find us a new one that's a little more helpful at this moment in time. And since they're in the graveyard, we can always just recast them. Rona, Herald of Invasion. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap Rona. We're casting a lot of legendary spells, so we're going to get to draw and discard a lot of cards. Discard lands to Muldrotha, bring them back, discard creatures. We can pay 6 mana, or 5 and 2 life, to flip her. Whenever a source deals any damage to her, that source's controller exiles a card from their hand at random. If it's a land, we may put it onto the battlefield under our control. Otherwise, if it's anything that isn't a land, we cast it for free. Very, very helpful. Just leave her up as a blocker. Anyone tries to swing at you? Nuh-uh, give me your shit. Anyone tries to cast a blasphemous act? Nuh-uh, give me your shit. Shadowheart, Dark Justicar. I keep being told to play Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't done it yet. Maybe I will one day. Who knows? Sacrifice creature, draw X cards. X is that power. Choose a background. Doesn't matter. We don't need it. Shielder the Apocalypse. I picked this art of her because it was the first one that's not in fucking Phyrexian. I hate the Phyrexian language. Lovely, lovely lady. Everyone knows this magic matriarch. Death Touched. Whenever you draw a card, gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. She will be a game changer. She will just simply keep us afloat while punishing our opponents for trying to play the game. Speaking of Shielder, we also have the Whispering one. At the beginning of your upkeep, return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Opponents are forced to sacrifice creatures at their upkeeps. More for us, less for them. Sidisi, Brood Tyrant, Mills. Very handy for Muldrotha. Whenever one of our creatures' cards are put into our graveyard from our library, for any reason, we create a free zombie that we can sacrifice later. Sidisi, nowadays, is up to the opposite of Vanifar. We sacrifice a creature, then we pull back from the graveyard instead of the battlefield. And you can just sacrifice something to Vanifar, sacrifice a second thing to Sidisi to bring back whatever you just sacrificed to Vanifar. Very funny combo. Sisters of Stone Death. Very, very helpful card here. Target creature is forced to block her for 1 mana. 2 mana, and we exile anything that blocks or is blocked by her. 3 mana, anything exiled by her becomes ours, free of charge. Very helpful for stealing annoying cards that your opponents are using to beat you down. Perhaps they're unblockable or just not safe to block. Taval, the balanced scale. You may have seen this pre-con. She's not in charge here, but she's very helpful. Whenever she attacks, mill 3 cards. More lands from the graveyard, back to the battlefield. Whenever 1 or more cards, period, leave the graveyard, more 2/2 zombies. Ukima, Stalking Shadow. Whenever she leaves the battlefield, she deals X damage to target player, and we gain X life, where X is its power. Number 1 sacrifice outlet here, and we can just keep casting her with Meldrotha. Vela the Nightclad gives all our creatures Intimidate, much easier to swing in to kill. Whenever her or another creature leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. Very, very nice. Viconia, draw Apostate. At the beginning of our upkeep, if there are 4 or more creature cards in your graveyard, return a card at random from your graveyard to your hand. Then, Zopandrel, Hunger Dominus. This one's real fun. This is pretty much our win con. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. In a pinch, she can sacrifice things to the graveyard to become unable to die. Very, very useful. I've won games that I should have lost to that doubling power. And now, for the lightning round. Land base is fundamentally uninteresting, minus these 2 cards. I took it from the newest Sultai Precon and added these 2, Tyrite Sanctum. Since everyone's a legendary, they become gods that then become indestructible. Rogue's Passage. I want to do combat damage. A lot of guys want to swing in. This makes it unblockable, so we don't have to worry about nasty little Death Touch or any other creatures blocking them. Our mana ramp is quite simple. Arcane Signet, Soul Ring. Demir's Signet, Golgari Signet, Commander Sphere. Relic of Legends taps our legendary creatures for mana. Very useful. Swiftfoot Boots is a non-mana artifact to keep things alive. Palantir of Orthanc, card's very funny. Whenever we start our end step, put an influence counter on it, scry 2. Target opponent may have you draw a card. If they don't, we mill X cards, giving us more stuff to get back from a lot of sources. And then they lose a lot of life because, you hit my Galta and took 30-something damage total. Mirror of Gladriel is a pretty much free scry once per turn because we only have legendary creatures. Instrument of the Bards gives us treasure tokens guaranteed and hunts for any creatures that we're looking for to start doing weird or funny combos. Very nice. Gives us treasure guaranteed. Hero's Podium. Each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other legendary creature control. Our guys who are swinging get even stronger. Can also reveal legendary creatures from our library, put them into our hand, and then shuffle. Or rather bottom. Helm of the Host. This one's our best. Put this on Zopandrel for the funniest stuff. At the beginning of combat, create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except the token isn't legendary. That token gains haste. I've had this equipped to Zopandrel, get 4 or 5 copies, and then I don't know how much damage I do anymore because I'm bad at math. Blackbait Reforged makes another creature that we're making unblockable, nice and strong, by giving him +1/+1 for each land we control, and it's very cheap to equip to Legends, which we have only. And now for our sorceries. In Garrick's Wake, destroy everything we don't own. Standard board wipe. Kamala's Druid Vow. To look at the top X cards, we may put any number of lands and legendaries onto the battlefield. Everything else goes in the graveyard, where we can try and recast it. Kodama's Reach finds us lands. Rampant Growth does the exact same. Rise of the Dark Realms. Anything that died, of ours or elsewhere, all back to us. We'll finish the game with this one, usually. Victimize brings 2 creatures back for the price of 1. Very nice. Villainous Wealth, not the strongest card, but stealing cards is funny, and we should be able to snag something decent with it. Beast Within, standard removal. Counterspell tells them, nuh-uh, I own this secret lair, which is why I picked this art specifically. I love Hatsune Miku. Deadly Rollick, more removal. Double Major copies a target creature spell we control, except it isn't legendary. Because it says creature spell, we have to be casting it in response to another creature we cast, but not a big deal. 2 extra mana to get one of our already really good cards. Very nice to have. Entomb, put something straight into the graveyard for Meldrotha to grab. Frantic Search is an emergency, pile things into our graveyard for Meldrotha to pick up later, and then give us cards that we need right here, right now. Untap 3 lands means it costs effectively 0 mana. Very nice emergency effect. Go for the Throat is more removal. Now, with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Check out something else of mine if you feel so inclined. There should be some stuff on this end screen here, and hey, I'll see you all next time around. If you got a funny deck idea for me, tell me in the comments below. I love building decks. Bye-bye.